My name's Erin Busch. I'm a composer and cellist. I'm currently residing in Philadelphia, where I've been for 11 years now, I guess. Went to Temple for my undergrad and master's in composition and cello, and took a couple years off to teach there. And now I'm doing my doctorate at Penn, just like a couple miles away. And I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia, so I've actually been in the area all my life. And how I got into music, I have always been very musical. When I was really young, my parents said that I would either become a musician or a dancer because I just was always singing and always moving. And I do still love to dance. I have no skill to back it up. Like, ask anybody. I can't dance, but I love to. But I still like sing all the time. And it's just, I started composing when I was like eight years old. Without really knowing what I was doing, and it just kind of, continued from there. I found teachers that were able to help and support me in that journey, applied and got into college, and now I'm here.
Wow, it seems like a very organic and sort of just natural unfolding.
Yeah, I never thought too much about it. Actually, growing up, it just felt like this is what I enjoy and this is what I want to do. And so when I started thinking about college choices, I guess my junior year, sophomore year of high school, I was actually torn between music and some sort of literature, like either English degree or journalism, because I love to write words and I love to read too. But music was always the thing that was calling the loudest.
What is it about music that makes it sort of fit into your life in such a profound way? What is that thing that makes it so central for you?
Well, I think a lot of it comes from my parents, particularly my dad, who only listens to classical music. He's not a musician professionally. He's like an amateur trombonist, but his whole life he's always listened to classical and like really out there stuff too, not just like your standard Rachmaninoff. And he, I grew up listening to Philip Glass and all these crazy Russian composers that wrote great trombone parts that my dad loved. And so I think it was just kind of always there. And it feels like home because it is home.
Yeah. So once again, it's that sort of, like I said earlier, it's sort of this organic, just sort of naturally fitting in a space that it's familiar to you because it is what you were experiencing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, my parents saw that we had a piano in the house growing up, just like in a standard upright, and I would start plunking away at it. And so they were like, oh, why don't you take some lessons? And then I took cello lessons when my elementary school had us start in like the third or fourth grade. And from there, the opportunities would just kind of emerge in kind of the traditional way you'd expect, where there's like a district orchestra and a school orchestra. We had a local youth orchestra that I was a member of for a long time. So I kind of just would add on a piece or two every year until it was like the main thing I was doing.
Yeah. So what is it that sort of drives you creatively in your life as a musician, or even maybe more specifically as a composer? What is that thing? What is it? What is your goal? Or what is at the center of what makes you want to write music?
It's hard for me to pinpoint the reason that I continue to do it, actually, because it feels like so massive. But I know that I am just always called back every time that I would leave, so even if it's just for like taking a month off, I like start to feel like the ideas coming into like the back of my brain, and they just feel like they need to come out. And when I graduated from my master's, I remember I was so just mentally drained. I did a double master's in 2 years, and it normally takes 3. And so I was just like so busy for a long time that I decided to take the whole summer off from creative work. I just really needed it. And I didn't even know if I would come back when I decided, because I was like just so drained. And I did, and I came back in a way that felt like so true to me, to what I was supposed to be doing. And it feels very intangible, but I guess that's the only thing I feel like I can say from the composer perspective. And then from like a larger, just like artist perspective, I do feel like there are more tangible things I can point to that drive me. One thing is the festival that I founded, which is called the Young Women Composers Camp, which I started back in 2018. We just finished our third season online like 2 days ago, which is a festival for young women and non-binary composers. And this year was international. We had some students from Australia and Europe, and it's really just been something that drives me is to level the playing field. I think we talk a lot about representation, and a lot of times representation only becomes clear in the professional stage. So, we maybe only see people like professional works, but we aren't really opening the pipeline, widening the pipeline for younger students to then enter that. So that's something that I care deeply about as an artist.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting, the idea that representation, inclusion, equity, and diversity really does seem to be more about sort of public-facing institutions, but there is an entire substrata upon substrata upon substrata that really needs to be opened up, examined, and sort of laid for us to not just see and examine, but to also nourish and allow the opportunity to be distributed equally and without violence. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big problem, and I think that it's just, I'm playing the long game. That's
the only game to play.
Yeah, right. Because it's very important, I think, for orchestras and larger organizations to begin changing their seasons immediately, really, to be more inclusive. But in order to actually diversify the field, that takes a long time.
It does.
And so it's really about planting the seeds early and then letting them grow naturally and continuing to nourish them over time.
And I also think, I don't know how you feel, maybe I'd like to get your opinion on this. I also feel like it's both a difficult problem because it has attached to it a lot of like institutional behavior and sort of cultural, just sort of blind spots. I think people just don't recognize it as a problem because they don't realize that they have never looked at it as a problem. But I also think it's, once you realize what the issue is, it's not difficult. Actually, I mean, it's really extremely simple. You just do it. And you just practice it, and all of a sudden it's not even like second nature or natural. It just is. It just becomes part of behavior, and it becomes part of culture in a way that's unforced, becomes organic. And it's just like, it's all around you. And maybe I'm being a little bit, pie in the sky, but I really feel that.
No, I totally would agree that the biggest problem is just making sure that people are aware of this issue, not on a surface level, but on a systemic level, and being able to recognize it literally everywhere. And I think once you do that, it's really hard to turn that awareness off. And so change then comes naturally, and also with the influence of larger organizations and donors who become, also aware of the issues.
Great, yeah. Is there anything outside of music that's non-musical that's really important to you, that's sort of central to your life?
Yeah, there are a lot of things I could think about. One thing that I love is just like yoga and meditative practices. And I've recently started doing a lot of mobility work just to I just love it sounds weird. I love like getting to know my body in that way. And so it feels very meditative for me to just do yoga. I do it most mornings. And so that's kind of the way that I like to start my day. I also love cooking. And so I do that a lot. And getting out into nature, like just I've bought a lot of backpacking gear recently. So I'm hoping that's going to be a bigger part of my, weekend adventures.
Great. Yeah, I think that just to go back to your your attachment to yoga.
Mm-hmm.
And when you mentioned body awareness, just sort of getting in touch with one's body, I think it's very interesting how in our society, many people, myself included, have sort of become disconnected or just sort of unaware of our physical being and really being in touch with what am I physically feeling? What is my physical presence? How aware am I of my body? Because, you know, a lot of times we sort of live in a world that doesn't necessarily, we live in a world that doesn't necessarily allow for that on a regular basis, but it's a really important part of just living a life that's more fulfilling and connected, I think.
Yeah, it definitely it kind of grounds you to a lot of self-acceptance, and it's beneficial for mental health too, and also obviously it has physical benefits for just like the way that you feel, and so that's something that I almost feel like I'm almost addicted to it, like anything else, because if you just do it for that long and you just feel the endorphins releasing, and now the mornings that I don't wake up and do yoga, I feel a little bereft.
Yeah. Oh, I understand.
Yeah.
Bereft. Oh, yes. Well, great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk today about yourself, and welcome to the conference. And I'm looking forward to hearing the new work that you're creating.
Me too.